Thank you for your time today. My name is Samantha Brown, xMatters Marketing Director. Today we're going to be talking about 5 questions your CIO must face, the new normal, in enterprise modern ops. Modern ops offers many benefits for the modern enterprise: business agility, increased productivity, leaner operations. Making the transition isn't easy, especially if you're not asking the right questions. Today we'll be talking about how your organization can create a culture that embraces modern ops, how your organization can maintain the reliability and security you need in a decentralized model, and how you can justify the cost to your CIO. Dive into the new normal for enterprise modern ops, hosted by Moogsoft and xMatters. I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers: Marty Jackson, Director, Product Evangelist, Office of the CTO at xMatters. He has over 20 years of experience in sales, product management, team management, and marketing related roles. Marty has successfully brought new organic solutions to the market with a focus on agile methodologies and lean development practices. Prior to xMatters, Marty worked in strategic roles at CA, HP, Mercury Interactive, and CompuWare. He holds ITSM certification and has a degree in marketing from Auburn University. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Sahil. Sahil Khanna is a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Moogsoft. He focuses on thought leadership in the area of algorithmic IT operations. And prior to Moogsoft, Sahil held product marketing positions at Alpine Data Labs and Pivotal. And now, I'd like to hand it over to Sahil to begin the presentation.
Great, thank you, Samantha. So a little bit about myself and my role at Moogsoft. I spend a lot of my time each week with speaking with different IT organizations to really understand what they're struggling with and where they want to be. And what's become clear to me is that ITOps and DevOps organizations have some of the brightest minds in the company that are responsible for solving some of the most difficult and crucial problems for the business, which is service quality. But instead of using those skills and intelligence for innovating, they're actually stuck spending a lot of their time firefighting because maintaining infrastructures has gotten so complex, and digital transformation is just making things even harder. So the reason why companies like Moogsoft and xMatters really exist is to make the lives of IT professionals easier so that they can really focus on innovating. And to you, Marty.
Thanks, Sahil. That's a great story, and I've got something that's fairly similar. I think in IT, we sometimes forget, the impact that we have on people's daily lives. And I try to keep myself grounded in the fact that the solutions we create and the processes that we follow impact people individually and directly. So one story that I've always kept, that's kind of kept me grounded, was of a mom who was a change manager at a major financial institution, and she missed all of her son's football games every Friday night, as that's when the final change list would come in, and she had to coordinate all that before the changes started being implemented on Sunday. So we had developed a solution that automated a good piece of that work, and she actually came up to me and hugged me with tears in her eyes and told me that since they had implemented this solution, she had not missed a single game of his senior year in his final season. So, I guess that's why I'm so passionate about this industry. We actually really do impact people on the individual level, and it's up to us to give them the means to have a balanced life. Back to you, Sahil.
Great. So next we'll talk about 5 questions that your CIO must face. So the first question is really, what is the true cost of digital transformation? And here's a story that I've heard several times now from people that I speak with. So someone attends a CIO event to go and network with some of their peers. They come back and they say, oh, look what this company's doing. Why aren't we doing that? So as an example, they talk to someone who's kicking off all new apps on AWS. They say, oh, we need to be on AWS so we can move faster, be more agile. So great, let's kick off a cloud project. So of all these new things and shifts and trends, the benefits are clear and they're really enticing. You can be more agile, you can increase revenue, beat the competition, et cetera. But there really isn't enough visibility and conversation around the risks that these projects are creating. To simplify digital transformation, it really revolves around 2 things. First is building new stuff, which falls into application development. And the second is supporting that stuff, which falls into ITOps and DevOps. And the more things you build and the faster you move, the more risk and instability you're really introducing for ops and DevOps to manage. And if you think about it, development has become really efficient by heavily adopting automation and very lean processes. But supporting is still extremely manual today, and it comes along with a huge costs that are both direct and indirect. Next slide, please. So what is the true cost of supporting digital transformation? We all know about the costs of tools, the upfront costs. So this includes an ecosystem of best-of-breed monitoring tools, an event management tool perhaps, ticketing tools, communication, and so on. So these tools are all really important to have in place, but if you think about it, they all have something in common. They're all human-defined. What that means is they all rely on humans to configure correctly and ask the right questions. So as a basic example, think about Google. Google is the world's most powerful search engine, but if you don't know what you're looking for, how is Google going to serve any value? So in an agile IT environment where change is occurring constantly, humans just can't keep up to ask the right questions and analyze that information correctly. So one of the first costs that's so often overlooked is productivity burn. You need people to manage all of these tools, analyze all the information that they create, but if they're spending all of their time configuring the tools, maybe writing rules, maintaining rules, opening and closing tickets, where's the time for innovation? And how can you be proactive in identifying impact? The truth is that ITOps and DevOps teams today reactively address incidents, and they address incidents with a lack of context. The reason is it's impossible for a human to look at an event stream and understand normal from abnormal. And it's impossible for them to understand complex relationships across systems. So IT leaders need to be asking questions like, how many people do we have writing rules? How many people do we have just opening and closing tickets? How many people are working for each P1, 2, and 3 incident? How many people bridge call? How long does it take to get everyone on a bridge call and assign ownership, and so on? So all of these things are the consequence of productivity burn and a lack of automation. So the next cost is visibility. You have all these best-of-breed monitoring tools, but are you actually able to aggregate all the information into a single place? Are your teams able to fully understand the big picture and effectively analyze all this information? If you're using a traditional event management system to help, chances are it's not able to integrate with the bulk of those tools. In fact, I recently spoke with a large energy company who told me that their legacy event management system they were using was giving them visibility into just 20% of their entire monitoring footprint, because that's all it was capable of integrating with. And the next cost is downtime. So it's really the consequence of this productivity burn and limited visibility, which leads to every CIO's nightmare, which is downtime. And for a digital business, as we know, downtime equals lost revenue. The cost of downtime is amplified when you consider the number of users impacted by an incident, as well as the full duration of an incident. So if your time to detect is 30 minutes and your time to resolve is 30 minutes, that's a full hour of downtime. And according to stats from DevOps.com, the cost of an application outage is anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million per hour. So altogether, with every new technology shift, you have to hire new experts, you have to buy new instrumentation, but the nature of the tooling and the limitations of humans comes along with deep hidden costs that really need to be considered when you bring on these new trends. Next slide, please. So as an example, one very large financial institution was struggling with a lot of things, but the biggest was bringing new projects to market because there's so much instability that was introduced by change. So this institution was using Netcool, their legacy event management system. It was actually only integrating with 20 of their tools, while over 50 tools were not connected. They'd built thousands of correlation rules. We're looking at roughly 2 million events per month, creating over 100 tickets per month. And the craziest thing to me was that they had 50 full-time employees that were just closing tickets and escalating tickets because there were so many false tickets and so much of a lack of context. It was taking about 130 minutes to resolve incidents, and 60% of their incidents were actually identified by customers first. So by implementing, algorithmic intelligence and intelligent communication, they were able to completely streamline their detection and their correlation of their ticketing. And in fact, by doing that, they were actually able to spend more time on innovation, and they were able to accelerate time to market for key projects by 18 months. Next slide, please.
You know, this is a perfect discussion point based off of what Sahil just talked about with that large financial institution. You know, one of the things that we've noticed on the culture side of the house is just how much has changed. You know, you've got to be able to embrace change and speed. And change used to be all about minimizing risk, and it was seen as a necessary evil. So there was all kinds of bureaucracy and things put in place that really slowed that innovation down. But now change is actually seen as a differentiator. And in highly competitive markets, the organizations that manage change internally better win the day. So you've got to be able to understand change, understand all the data you've got, be able to manipulate it, and do the things you need to do quickly to bring those new services to market. Next slide, please. Okay, so, you know, one of the things we've touched on is automation important, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let's talk about how we got here. So one of the things that used to happen was the Wild West. You know, somebody needed to make a change in production. They just made the change without little oversight, caused a lot of issues. So then ITSM was born to kind of take some of that risk out of it. But what happened is it became so heavy-handed, labor-intensive, et cetera, with good intentions, but it slowed innovation down. So how do you balance that? And that's where modern ops came into play, right? So, you know, used to you have tons of data, you couldn't do very much with it because you had a little intelligence to tie it all together. But with new solutions like Moogsoft and xMatters, it allows us to integrate across these different stacks, become smarter with correlation and targeted communication. So now we can automate those things, and that's great, but we shouldn't just automate for its own sake. Automation is fundamental, but it needs to drive specific values such as cross-team communication, sharing and aggregation of information, and acting upon that information. So management needs to support these new ideals with well-known methods, enabling those tools, the expectation of collaboration and information, driving that action. And then the result will be a lean organization that relies on tools for automation, smart aggregation of data to make those intelligence decisions, and then collaboration across tools and teams. That's how you're going to get to that point of being able to do things quickly and innovate as needed. Next slide, please. So I want to just give a quick overview of a very standard use case that we see. So we had a U.S. oil and energy company, and they were looking to take a lot of the labor-intensive piece out of their NOC. So they wanted to eliminate that outsourced NOC to an in-source NOC without staffing 24/7. And typically before now, you couldn't really do something like that. You had to have eyes on glass. You had to have people working 24/7 to look at that. Again, it's a fairly industry standard issue. And the current NOC was analyzing raw alerts, trying to determine what notification was needed to be sent out and to whom, et cetera. So that means absolutely that you've built delay into your system. Number one, you've got the delay of eyes on glass, and then figuring out, okay, now I've got an alert. What do I do with it? Do I reach out to someone? Should I reach out to someone, et cetera? So it was very difficult to get the right people on the job trying to do the right thing and solve it. So the solution was to integrate xMatters with their service desk solution. So anything that was deemed a P1 or a P2 automatically notified the people that were on call and consolidated those schedules. So everything became much more fast, much more easy to handle and repeatable and scalable. So the benefits were they integrated this solution in less than 22 days. So it's a very quick integration. They eliminated that fully outsourced NOC and brought in-house, no more eyes on glass and missing those alerts and not knowing what to do, and ultimately having that full visibility to alert and understand who's responding with zero missed notifications. So they eliminated tons of labor, which can be a scary thing in a way because that's the comfort of I know I've got people watching it. But if you've got the right automation and integration, you can lower that labor cost and have them focus on innovation and be able to solve these issues much more quickly. Next slide, please.
Great. So as Marty touched on, we're definitely well overdue for a major culture shift in IT organizations. Like the traditional NOC and ITIL processes that we all know is vulnerable to things like operational silos and lack of context and disparity between tool sets, and just an overall reactive nature in addressing incidents. So similar to the way in which applications are being decentralized in enterprise microservices architectures, teams can also shift to operate in a more agile fashion where you build and maintain your own applications. So what I'm saying is there needs to be a shift from generalists to specialists, where we're seeing team-based collaboration instead of silos. Next slide, please. So while we're definitely seeing this movement already in 2017, there really needs to be some core functionality to support these specialists and give them the full visibility and context across their domain so that they can perform properly. And what I mean by this is 5 teams looking at 5 different tools doesn't work. What happens is an incompleteness of picture, duplication of effort, constant escalations, and just wasted time because according to each team, it's not us. So based on what I've seen and what our organization believes, teams need some core functionality. This includes real-time analysis of monitoring data. So you need to be able to really open up the floodgates of your existing monitoring ecosystem and automatically cut out the noise and pinpoint what's important all in real time. Next, you need automatic correlation across the stack. So what I mean by this is, let's look at an example. If a storage server breaks, you might get events from that server. But if the storage server is connected to a database, you might also get database events because the disk is unavailable, so the database can't read. And if the database can't read, then what about all the applications that are connected to the database? You're going to get events from those as well. And there really needs to be some correlation across the application and the network and the infrastructure to understand that full impact and identify what's related. And in addition to correlation, you need service awareness. So you've identified that something has gone wrong, but what services are impacted and which individuals are responsible for that service? So by leveraging things like alert attributes and any available data like CI or CMBD data, tools like Moogsoft can actually tie situations to business services. And finally, we believe that you need some intelligent and targeted communication to deliver that critical information across your organization accordingly. The context and service awareness can actually plug into tools like xMatters to immediately deliver insight to the right people at the right time, despite complex escalation schedules and device preferences. So algorithmic intelligence can really provide this real-time context into the health of business services. And this context can be leveraged by intelligent communication technology to distribute that insight to the right SMEs at the right time. Next slide, please. So a quick example is a digital insurance provider. So this organization I'm talking about is one of the largest insurance providers in the world, and they faced serious challenges when they introduced a new digital business unit. So they were using a legacy event management system, and they were struggling with the rules-based limitations and the inability to ingest newer event sources and the extremely high service costs to maintain those tools. So they were struggling to detect incidents, and productivity was a major issue. In fact, when I spoke with the tooling manager, he talked me through an incident where a firewall went down. So he told me that one operator was logged into App Dynamics, looking through a storm of transaction alerts, application response time events, exception events, and server connectivity events. He told level 2 application support that they lost application server connectivity. But at the same time, another operator was on the phone with their network provider, telling them that the firewall had gone down. So these guys were sitting right next to each other, but it actually took both operators 30 minutes to realize that they were actually investigating the same issue. And it was at this time that the tooling manager decided that they really needed to make a change. So after implementing Moogsoft, they were actually able to fully automate the detection and correlation of events and incidents. So today, they've reported that they're detecting incidents up to an hour earlier than they previously were, and they've reported a 10x increase in operator productivity from the massive reduction in workload. Next slide, please. So I've talked about automation and algorithmic intelligence, but how does this all work? It really comes down to machine learning and AI. And today, we're at a point in time where machine learning and AI is fully capable of automating certain tasks and enriching upstream processes. And if you look at automation across IT today, there's a major imbalance. So on one side, you have app development, and on the other, you have IT operations. And app development is extremely automated today. For example, builds are automated overnight, releases are automated, deployments, testing, provisioning of servers, integration testing, and so on. So today, CIO should really be asking, what can I automate in operations with machine learning? Next slide. So if you look at operations across the enterprise, it's still extremely manual. Operators are analyzing millions of events manually from their monitoring tools. They're manually correlating events, or sometimes manually building correlation rules that require constant maintenance. And then they manually escalate tickets until everyone gets on a bridge call and assigns ownership, and only then do they start to troubleshoot and resolve. So this process that we follow was good enough when environments were small and centralized and change was infrequent. But today, the complexity and the rate of change has really surpassed human cognition. Humans really cannot analyze massive volumes of data, and we can't analyze data quickly, and we certainly can't understand relationships across the different layers of IT and across tool sets. So this is why we're dealing with excessive volumes of tickets and constant escalations and finger pointing, and it's ultimately why customers are identifying incidents before we are. So machine learning can and should be leveraged to assist humans in the most critical and challenging and error-prone tasks. So algorithms should be used to automate the analysis of data, the detection of anomalies, correlation of millions of events all in real time, to really allow humans to focus on resolving incidents and innovating. Next slide, please. So HCL is one of the largest IT service providers in the world. And traditionally, they were relying on a catch and dispatch workflow, which is a manual process where operators would receive and assign alarms to domain experts via their legacy event management system. But as environments got more complex, along with scale and constant change, relying on these legacy systems became an issue. In fact, they reported that it could take up to hours to resolve incidents. So after modernizing their tool sets with tools like Moogsoft, they now send event streams from over 20 different sources to Moogsoft centrally. And with that, they're now seeing an 85% reduction on average in noise, a 62% reduction in ticket volumes, and a 33% reduction in time to resolve incidents. So in short, they're really automating a bulk of their IT operations workflow and really allowing their teams to focus on what's important. Next slide, please.
So organizational efficiency at scale sounds super impressive, but what are we really talking about? What we're talking about is having the ability to take what works at the micro level and apply it to the enterprise. So allow teams to be autonomous, use the tools that they need to use, but still be able to act within the collective whole for true agility. In other words, be able to share that data, make intelligence out of that data across the stack, as Sahil mentioned earlier. So, for example, organizations and customers expect always on. For instance, Google or Facebook. When I go to Google, I expect to be able to do a search. I don't care how often they're doing change. I don't care how many events that they're having or major incidents. I expect Google to be there. And that's what customers expect from every IT organization. So we've got to figure out how we do that. So, those organizations I just mentioned, they're fully mod ops. They're driving change 24/7, but they're still always on. Next slide, please. So modern ops is fueled by autonomy. Many teams making many different choices in their best interest to drive the value that they need and expect. So in many cases, what do we have today? Well, sort of what Sahil talked about, some of the things you would expect. A lot of different teams, different tools, running different processes, et cetera. And that works in small bites, but it doesn't necessarily work across an organization. It starts to fail. And the reason why is there's no unbroken chain of data. And why is that important? Well, even autonomous teams eventually impact other teams. Processes of delivery or integration can still overlap. So that data from one team or service may be hidden from another. So while there are economies of scale within teams, the promise of that scale still eludes many organizations. So how do we resolve that? We get that economy of scale beyond each individual team to reach outside that team from within the entire organization. The way that we do that is a combination of allowing each team to determine what's best for their needs, while also pushing towards trying these disparate solutions together. So they need to share that data. For instance, many organizations have multiple monitoring solutions. The answer to that noise is smarter aggregation. The things that Sahil was talking about, being able to use that machine learning, get smarter with it, and know what to do with it. So as you get more intelligence across the organization to determine what's real and what's the impact, then you know what needs to be done. So next, you automate the action upon that data. That action could include opening tickets or chat rooms or conference bridges, anything across the organization, but only to the right sets of services and people. In other words, autonomy, intelligence, and then automation with targeted communication. That's actually what we're talking about. Next slide, please. So, for instance, is Kellogg Corporation. They were able to cut their resolution times by over 80%. So let's talk about the problem first. The executives initiated a 3-year plan to elevate the company efficiency, and they wanted to automate a lot of IT events and integrate it with all their monitoring solutions. And until then, it was just literally impossible to manually map everything across all the incidents, et cetera. Again, back to Sahil's point, they just were not able to keep up with the rate of those incidents and the complexity of their environment. So what they chose to do is use xMatters for alerting automatically across the stack, get a positive return on that investment. It ties smoothly into the company's broader cloud-based infrastructure as well. And so what they started to do was use that data and kick off some of their processes for alerting all these events across 88 different global teams across the entire stack, whether it's mobile, SMS, et cetera. So the benefits that they got was reduced mean time to resolution by 83% or better. Accuracy exceeds 99.99%, so we can call it 100% for easy math. And they cut their resources by 92%. So in combination with smarter monitoring and ticketing, that savings is expected to add up over $2.5 million. So they're getting real impact by tying these things together, getting smarter with the data that they have, and then smarter with the action on that data. Next slide, please.
Great. So in summary to what Marty and I have just talked about today, this slide is really, proposing the workflow that organizations should be, adopting today. So in the past, while all these steps were extremely manual, today it's with tools like Moogsoft and xMatters in your existing monitoring ecosystem, it's totally possible to automate a bulk of your operational workload. So starting from the left, you have all of your, monitoring ecosystem producing a huge volume of alerts and events each day, which is important for getting that visibility. But you can now today with tools like Moogsoft analyze all that information in real time, reduce the noise, understand relationships, and detect anomalies through supervised and unsupervised machine learning algorithms. So those situations that Moogsoft creates and the context can then be plugged in directly into xMatters.
Exactly. And then, you would have to take this data and look at Excel spreadsheets and send out emails and all the ugliness that you just really didn't want to have to deal with. And today, with these integrations like xMatters has with Moog, we can start to instantiate across the life cycle. So we can open up bridges, contact participants, open up chat rooms, and then close loop all that data back to the source of truth. So along that path, we're enriching the data from Moogsoft, getting the teams the data that they need, all the way again funneled back to the original part of the life cycle. So as Sahil said, you can take this data now that before was overwhelming, get smarter with it, and then get smarter with the action that you take on it. Next slide.
So in summary to what we talked about today, the 5 questions that your CIO must face include costs of digital transformation, culture, how the organization should look in 2017, where AI and ML fit in, and organizational efficiency at scale. Next slide.
So, we're talking about enabling ModOps, DevOps collaboration across teams and tools. And we've talked a lot about autonomy, integrations, and automation. So this is where xMatters live. We live in the space where automation needs to occur between solutions such as Moog and chat rooms, but also where people need to be communicated with to either take action or become aware of issues. We've discussed the need for teams to have their own boutique of solutions, which creates a need to tie those things together. Whether it's multiple monitoring solutions, release management, incident management, et cetera, they all need to work in concert together to pass not only action, but data. And that's exactly what xMatters does. We enable the automation and therefore collaboration between tools and people.
Thank you. And so Moogsoft AIOps is essentially a next generation event management system. We're able to integrate with your entire ecosystem of monitoring tools, ticketing tools, communication, and so on to really centralize all of that information and apply a series of supervised and unsupervised machine learning algorithms to reduce the noise, detect anomalies and correlate incidents and really present that information to people with context. Next slide.
Well, thank you everyone for your time today. We hope you found the content valuable. Marty and Sahil, we appreciate your time very much sharing this information. If you're interested in trying either of our products at xMatters, you can go to xmatters.com/Moogsoft and try it today. Moogsoft, you can go to moogsoft.com/request-trial. Thank you very much for your time and have an awesome day. Thanks.